The first time I saw Lieutenant Kira Vance, she was bleeding from 3 different wounds and still managed to crack a joke about the cafeteria food. I should probably back up. My name is Threlkos, Senior Diplomatic Observer for the Galactic Union, and I had been stationed aboard the joint species vessel Meridian's Hope for exactly 47 cycles when everything went sideways. The ship was supposed to be a symbol of cooperation between 12 different species, a floating testament to peace and mutual understanding. Naturally, it attracted pirates like moths to a very expensive, very poorly defended flame. The humans had only been part of the Union for 2 standard years at that point. Most species took decades to integrate into our systems, learning proper protocols, understanding the delicate balance of power that kept thousands of worlds from tearing each other apart. The humans? They showed up, signed some documents, immediately complained about the bureaucracy, and then started doing things their own way anyway. Which brings me back to Kira Vance. When the alarms started blaring, I was in my quarters reviewing trade agreements. The kind of mind-numbing work that makes you question your life choices. The ship's automated systems announced a boarding party in that annoyingly calm voice that all AI seem to have. Like they are telling you about a weather pattern instead of armed hostiles cutting through your hull. I grabbed my emergency beacon and headed for the designated safe room, as per protocol. That is what civilized species do. We have procedures, we have plans. We certainly do not go running toward danger with what can only be described as enthusiasm. The corridor was chaos, not the metaphorical kind, the actual kind, with sparks flying from damaged panels and the smell of burning insulation making my respiratory system protest. I saw Captain Morkstal, our Vrexian commander, herding a group of science personnel toward safety. His scales were flashing, that particular shade of distressed purple that meant he was approximately 3 seconds away from molting in fear. That is when I heard the laughter. Not nervous laughter. Not the kind of sound someone makes when they are terrified and trying to cope. This was genuine amusement, echoing down the corridor from the direction everyone else was fleeing from. I am not stupid. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to follow protocol and get to safety. But curiosity is a curse, and I had been assigned to study human integration into the Union. So, like an idiot, I crept toward the sound. The main cargo bay had been breached. I could see the makeshift airlock the pirates had attached to our hull. An ugly piece of work that spoke of frequent use. Approximately 30 hostiles had made it aboard, all members of the Kresh Collective. Nasty bunch. They specialized in raiding diplomatic vessels because we rarely carried military escorts. Pirates with a business model, if you can believe that. The Kresh are big. Not quite as large as some species, but well-muscled, covered in thick hide that can stop most standard energy weapons, and armed with enough firepower to take down a building. They had already secured the bay and were fanning out into the ship. Standing in the middle of all of this, surrounded by approximately 15 Kresh warriors, was Lieutenant Kira Vance. She was human average height, which meant she was considerably shorter than most of the pirates. Dark hair pulled back in what I later learned was called a ponytail, wearing the standard Union security uniform that was already torn in several places. Blood ran down her left arm from a nasty gash. Her right leg had taken some kind of energy burn, and I was pretty sure that was a piece of shrapnel sticking out of her shoulder. She was smiling. "So," she said, her voice carrying that weird human accent that always sounds like they are about to either fight you or invite you for drinks. "Here is the thing. You boys really picked the wrong ship on the wrong day." The Kresh leader, a massive specimen with more scars than smooth skin, made a gesture that I recognized as dismissive amusement. "Human female, you are damaged. Surrender, and you will not be further harmed. We only want cargo and hostages for trade. Resist, and you die." Kira tilted her head, considering this. Tempting offer. Really? but I have to decline on account of my sparkling personality and complete inability to follow instructions." She reached into one of her uniform pockets and pulled out a small blade. The creche leader laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. His warriors relaxed slightly, clearly not considering a small knife to be any kind of threat. 1 blade against 15 warriors? The leader gestured at his weapons. Even for a human, this is foolish. "Oh," Kira said, and her smile got wider. "Who said I only have 1 blade? What happened next is going to sound like an exaggeration. I promise you, it is not." She reached into another pocket and pulled out a second knife. Different style, slightly longer. The creche tensed, but did not seem overly concerned. Then she reached into her boot and produced a 3rd blade. Then her other boot. Then a pocket on her thigh. Then another pocket on her other thigh. She kept going. By the time she had emptied 17 pockets, both boots and 3 locations, I still am not entirely sure where they were on her person. There were blades everywhere. On the ground at her feet, tucked into her belt. One between her teeth. She was juggling 2 of them. "You know what is funny?" she said around the knife in her mouth, somehow still perfectly understandable. "Every species I have met thinks humans only carry 1 backup weapon. 1, like we plan for the best-case scenario, instead of assuming everything will go wrong simultaneously while on fire." The creche leader had stopped laughing. "This is madness." "Yes," Kira agreed cheerfully. "Yes, it is. But here is the thing about humans. We are all at least a little bit insane. It is part of our charm. Also, our survival strategy. Hard to predict what a human will do when we do not even know ourselves." She dropped into a fighting stance, and I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Well, colder. My species runs cool anyway. The knives were not just scattered randomly. They were positioned, each one within easy reach, each one at a different angle. She had turned herself into a mobile weapons platform, and she had done it so casually that it looked like a party trick. "Last chance," the creche leader growled. "Surrender or die." Kira spit the knife out of her mouth. It stuck into the deck, plating with a solid thunk. "Third option. I make you regret that you can feel regret." Then she moved. I have seen combat. I have watched training exercises from a dozen different species, each one proud of their warrior traditions and battle techniques. Nothing prepared me for watching a wounded human with too many knives and absolutely no sense of self-preservation turn into a whirlwind of violence. She did not fight like she was trying to survive. She fought like gravity was a suggestion, and pain was something that happened to other people. The first creche to reach her got a blade through the gap in his armor, where the shoulder joint met the chest plate. The second one took a knife to the knee, and another to what I am pretty sure was somewhere very uncomfortable. Kira bounced between them, using their size against them, turning their weapons into obstacles. When she ran out of knives in her hands, she picked up more from the ground. When those ran out, she pulled 3 more from pockets I had not even seen her touch. "Where do you keep getting those?" one of the pirates actually yelled, more confused than angry. "I have 47 pockets in this uniform," Kira shouted back, driving another blade into an unfortunate creche's foot. "Your intelligence was terrible and you should feel bad about your life choices." 27 pockets emptied, 3 pirates down, 2 more limping. The rest were actually backing up, which is not something creche do. They are proud warriors with a long military tradition. They do not retreat from one damaged opponent. But Kira was not fighting like an opponent. She was fighting like a natural disaster that had decided to take things personally. She rolled under an energy blast, came up throwing 2 knives simultaneously, both of which found targets in armor joints. "You know what else is funny?" she said, breathing hard but still somehow maintaining that conversational tone. "Most species think humans are weak because we do not have natural armor or claws or venom. But we have something better. A Kresh warrior charged her with a vibro blade the size of my arm. She sidestepped, grabbed his weapon arm, and used his momentum to send him crashing into two of his companions. We have spite, and stubbornness, and a really impressive ability to keep going when we should absolutely be unconscious or dead. 32 pockets emptied. The Kresh leader was starting to look genuinely worried, which was when I heard the sound of running footsteps behind me. Captain Morkstal appeared with a security team, weapons drawn and ready. They stopped dead, staring at the scene in the cargo bay. Kira was still moving, still fighting, blood streaming from multiple wounds that should have put her down 10 minutes ago. Should we? One of the security officers started to say. No, Captain Morkstal said quietly. I do not think we should interrupt. 39 pockets. The Kresh were actively retreating now, trying to get back to their airlock. Kira was not letting them. She moved like something that had forgotten how to stop, pressing forward, another blade appearing from somewhere near her ankle. The thing about humans, she said, and her voice was getting rougher now, pain finally starting to show through, is that we are really bad at knowing when to quit. It is a flaw. Definitely a flaw. But sometimes, she drove home another blade, and another Kresh went down. Sometimes it is useful. 45 pockets emptied. The remaining pirates had made it to their airlock. They were sealing it behind them, clearly deciding that whatever cargo they had come for was not worth dealing with one insane human female and her apparently infinite supply of knives. Kira stood there, swaying slightly, watching them go. Then she reached into two final pockets and pulled out one last blade, a different style from all the others. Longer, heavier, clearly meant for something specific. 47, she said, almost to herself. I win the bet. Then she collapsed. The medical team rushed in immediately, and I found myself following them without really deciding to. They loaded Kira onto a stretcher, already working on her wounds. The head medic, a Sorinth with 6 arms, which made her excellent at multitasking, was making distressed clicking sounds. How is she alive? The medic muttered. Blood loss alone should have rendered her unconscious. The pain must be extraordinary. Human adrenaline response, one of her assistants said, checking readings. Their bodies can override pain signals and keep functioning far past what should be possible. It is terrifying. It is remarkable, I corrected, surprising myself. They looked at me like they had just noticed I was there. Fair enough. I am a bureaucrat, not medical staff. I had no business being in the emergency treatment area. You know this human? The medic asked. I am supposed to be observing human integration, I said. I think I just got a crash course. They rushed Kira to the medical bay, and I followed at a distance. Protocol said I should be filing reports, documenting the incident, doing my actual job. Instead, I found myself standing outside the medical bay, waiting. Captain Morkstal found me there an hour later. His scales had returned to their normal shade of calm green. The pirates have left, he said. They sent a message apologizing for the misunderstanding and requesting we forget this incident occurred. Apologizing, I repeated. Apparently, one injured human is worth more than whatever they thought they could steal. He shook his head. I have been a captain for 30 years, Threlkos. I have never seen anything like that. Neither have I. We stood there in silence for a moment before he continued. The lieutenant had apparently made a bet with several crew members about how many blades she could carry at once. She claimed 47. Everyone thought she was exaggerating. She was not. No, she was not. He looked at me with those large Vrexian eyes that could see into the infrared spectrum. Your report on this incident is going to be interesting. That is one word for it. He left, and I continued waiting. I am not sure why. Professional curiosity? Maybe. Or maybe because I had just watched someone redefine what I thought I knew about humans, and I needed to understand it better. The medical bay doors opened eventually. Kira walked out under her own power, which seemed impossible given that I had watched her collapse. She was bandaged extensively, moving carefully, but she was walking. She saw me and stopped. "Hey! You are the Union observer, right? Threll, what's it?" "Threll Kos?" I said. "Yes. I am supposed to be documenting human behavior and integration into Union society." "Well, that was probably not the best example." She winced, touching her bandaged shoulder. "I do not normally start my shift by fighting 15 pirates. That was more of a special occasion thing. You had 47 knives." "Technically, I had 47 bladed implements. Some of them were knives. Others were more specialized. I have a whole categorization system." She grinned, and despite the pain she was clearly in, it was genuine. "Did I win the bet?" "According to Captain Mork's Tal, yes." "Excellent. I am going to collect so many credits, worth every stab wound." She started to walk past me, then paused. "Hey, Threlkos, in your report, maybe mention that not all humans are like me. I am what we call an outlier. Most humans only carry like 10 or 15 backup weapons." She said it completely seriously, and it took me a moment to realize she was joking. I think. "I will make sure my report is thorough," I said. "Great. Because honestly, I want to know what I am going to do next. Surprise me." She waved and continued down the corridor, limping but unbowed. I stood there for a long time, trying to organize my thoughts into something resembling a coherent report. The humans had been in the Union for 2 years. Lieutenant Kira Vance had been aboard the Meridian's Hope for 47 cycles, and I had just learned that every single thing I thought I knew about humans was laughably incomplete. This was going to be a very long assignment, and based on the gleam in Lieutenant Vance's eyes as she walked away, probably a very interesting one too. 3 days after the knife incident, as it was being called in official reports, I was summoned to the command deck. Not requested. Summoned. Which meant something had gone wrong again. Captain Mork's Tal was standing in front of the main view screen, his scales flickering between green and that worried purple. Next to him was Lieutenant Vance, looking considerably more put together than the last time I had seen her. Still bandaged in places, but upright and apparently functional. "Threlkos," the captain said without preamble, "we have a situation?" "Of course we did. The Kresh Collective has filed a formal complaint with the Union," he continued. "They claim Lieutenant Vance used excessive force and violated 17 different combat protocols." I looked at Kira, who was examining her fingernails with extreme interest. "They attacked us first." "Yes, well, apparently there are rules about how one should defend oneself during a pirate raid." The captain's scales went fully purple. "They want a formal tribunal, which means we need witnesses, which means you." "Me? You observed the entire engagement. Your testimony will be required." He looked miserable about this. "I am sorry, Threlkos. I know this is not what you signed up for. Actually, observing human behavior was exactly what I signed up for. I just did not expect it to involve legal proceedings 3 days into the job." The tribunal was scheduled for 2 weeks later at Union Station Apex, a massive diplomatic installation that served as neutral ground for exactly this kind of dispute. We docked without incident, though I noticed the station security gave our ship extra attention. Word had apparently spread about the incident. The hearing room was designed to accommodate multiple species, with adjustable gravity sections, atmosphere controls, and translation systems built into every surface. Very impressive, very expensive. Very much overkill for what should have been an open and shut case. The Kresh had brought lawyers, 3 of them. Large, intimidating, covered in ceremonial scars that denoted their legal victories. They looked like they ate small species for breakfast and filed the appropriate paperwork afterward. Kira sat at the defense table wearing her formal uniform, which I had not even known existed. She looked almost respectable. Almost. There was still something in her expression that suggested she was one bad decision away from doing something memorable. "This should be fun," she whispered as I took my seat in the witness area. "Your definition of fun concerns me," I whispered back. The tribunal judges entered. 3 beings from 3 different species, chosen for their impartiality and legal expertise. A Varoth with 12 eyes that could see multiple spectrums simultaneously. A Corellian, whose species was known for perfect memory. And a human. Wait, a human judge. Kira saw my expression and grinned. Yeah, that is Judge Marcus Webb. He is known for being absolutely brutal in his interpretations of union law. No favoritism, no exceptions. If anything, he is harder on humans than anyone else. Why does that not comfort me? Because you are learning. The lead creche lawyer stood, his bulk making the reinforced floor creak. Honored tribunal, we come before you, seeking justice. Lieutenant Kira Vance, of the Union vessel Meridian's Hope, engaged in excessive and unwarranted violence against my clients, who were merely attempting to conduct a standard boarding operation. Standard boarding operation, Judge Webb repeated, his voice flat. You mean piracy? A term with legal complexities, honored judge. My clients operate under salvage rights as recognized by the Outer Rim territories. The Meridian's Hope was not abandoned, damaged, or requesting assistance. It was a fully operational diplomatic vessel in protected space. The Varoth judge's multiple eyes focused independently on different parts of the room. Please explain how this qualifies as salvage. The lawyer shifted his weight. My clients received information that the vessel was in distress. From whom? That information is privileged. Judge Webb made a note on his datapad. We will return to that. Continue with your complaint regarding Lieutenant Vance. The lieutenant engaged in combat with my clients, despite having opportunities to surrender. She employed excessive force, used an unreasonable number of weapons, and caused significant physical and psychological harm to warriors who were merely performing their duties. Their illegal duties, the Corellian judge noted, her perfect memory already pulling up relevant statutes. Alleged illegal duties, the lawyer corrected smoothly. Regardless of the circumstances, Lieutenant Vance violated Union combat protocols, Section 12, Paragraph 47, which states that defenders should use minimum necessary force and seek de-escalation whenever possible. I saw Kira tense slightly. Apparently, that was an actual regulation. She also violated the Weapons Limitation Clause, which restricts security personnel to carrying no more than 3 weapon systems while on duty aboard diplomatic vessels. 3? Kira said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Who wrote that rule? Someone who has never been in a fight. Judge Webb looked at her over his datapad. Lieutenant Vance, you will have an opportunity to speak. Please wait your turn. She subsided, but I could see her counting on her fingers, probably calculating how many regulations she had broken. The creche lawyer continued for another 20 minutes, outlining every single way Kira had apparently violated proper conduct. By the end of it, she was facing potential discharge from Union service, fines that would bankrupt a small planet, and possibly criminal charges. Finally, it was the defense's turn. Kira did not have a lawyer. She had insisted on representing herself, which Captain Morkstal had described as either very brave or very stupid. She stood, favoring her injured legs slightly, and faced the tribunal. Honored judges, I am going to be real honest here. I did have 47 bladed weapons on my person during that engagement. I did use excessive force by Union standards. I absolutely did not attempt to de-escalate or surrender. She paused, and I would do it all again without changing a single thing. The creche lawyers looked triumphant. This was apparently exactly what they wanted her to say. The Union has a lot of rules, Kira continued. Good rules, mostly. Rules designed to prevent conflicts, protect civilians, maintain order across thousands of worlds. I respect that. I really do. But here is the thing about rules. They work great right up until someone ignores them, and comes at you with intent to harm. Judge Webb leaned forward slightly. Are you arguing that the regulations do not apply in combat situations? No, sir. I am arguing that the regulations were written by people who have never been in a situation where 15 armed hostiles are between you and the civilians you are sworn to protect. She gestured at the creche lawyers. They keep talking about excessive force and de-escalation. Let me tell you what would have happened if I had followed protocol exactly. She pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's layout. Standard procedure says I should have retreated to a defensive position and waited for backup, which sounds great, except that backup was on the other side of the ship, and the pirates were between me and 200 unarmed crew members. If I retreat, they get to those crew members first. The hologram showed the likely path the creche would have taken. Straight through 3 civilian sections. Protocol says I should have used minimum necessary force. Tried talking. Offered to negotiate. Kira's expression hardened. These pirates specialize in taking hostages. Their business model depends on grabbing people and demanding ransom. Every second I spent talking was another second they had to spread through the ship. The Corellian judge was watching the hologram intently. You believed engagement was the only option? I believed that doing something was better than doing nothing. Maybe I am wrong. Maybe there was a perfect solution that would have saved everyone without violence. But I had about 5 seconds to decide. I was outnumbered 15-1, and I was bleeding from 3 different holes in my body. She shrugged. So I used what I had. 47 knives, the Varoth judge said, several eyes focused on Kira. Yes, ma'am? I carry backups for my backups, because in my experience, everything breaks at the worst possible time. Weapons malfunction. Equipment fails. The universe has a sense of humor, and it hates me personally. She smiled slightly. So I prepare for that. By carrying an arsenal? By being ready for when things go wrong, which they did. Spectacularly. She looked at the creche lawyers. Your clients brought 30 warriors onto my ship, heavily armed, armored, equipped for extended combat. And you want to complain that I had too many knives? The regulations are clear, one of the lawyers started. The regulations assume everyone plays fair, Kira interrupted. Your clients did not play fair. They cut through our hull, bypassed our security, and came aboard with intent to commit violence. But somehow I am the one on trial for fighting back too effectively? Judge Webb held up a hand. Lieutenant Vance, the law must apply equally to everyone, regardless of circumstances. If we make exceptions for sympathetic cases, the entire system breaks down. I understand that, sir. I do. But the law also has to be reasonable. If Union regulations make it impossible to defend Union vessels, then the regulations need to change. She pulled up another display. In the past 5 years, there have been 43 successful pirate raids on diplomatic vessels. 43 times that hostages were taken, ransom was paid, and the pirates got away with it. Because security personnel followed protocol. Because they used minimum force. Because they tried to de-escalate. The numbers hung in the air, undeniable. How many successful raids has there been on vessels where defenders ignored protocol and fought back? The Corellian judge asked. 7, and in 6 of those cases, the defenders were human. Kira met the judge's gaze. I am not saying humans are better. I am saying we approach problems differently. We do not assume things will work out. We prepare for disaster, and we fight like cornered animals when we have to. That is not a compliment, Judge Webb said dryly. No, sir, it is not. It is a survival trait that we developed over thousands of years of evolution on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. She gestured at herself. Look, I am not a diplomat. I am not a lawyer. I am security personnel who got stuck between pirates and civilians and made a choice. Maybe it was the wrong choice legally, but it was the right choice morally, and I will stand by that. The tribunal conferred quietly among themselves. I found myself leaning forward, genuinely uncertain how this would go. The law was clear, but so was the outcome. Finally, Judge Webb spoke. "We will hear from the witness. Observer Threlkos, please approach." I stood on what I hoped were steady legs and moved to the witness stand. All three judges focused on me with varying numbers of eyes. "Observer Threlkos, you watched the entire engagement," the Varoth judge said. "In your professional opinion, was Lieutenant Vance's response appropriate? That was the question, was it not? The entire case hinged on that single word, appropriate. Honored judges, I have been a diplomatic observer for 12 years. I have watched conflicts, negotiations, and cultural exchanges across dozens of species. I have seen how different beings approach problems, how they handle stress, how they react when threatened." I paused, choosing my words carefully. What I saw Lieutenant Vance do was not appropriate by Union standards. It was messy, violent, and completely disregarded established protocols. I saw Kira's shoulders slump slightly. "However," I continued, "it was also the most effective defense I have ever witnessed. She was injured, outnumbered, and operating in a situation where following protocol would have resulted in significant civilian casualties. She adapted, she used available resources, and she stopped the threat." I looked at the Kresh lawyers. "Your clients left. They retreated. They apologized. Not because they suddenly developed ethics, but because one human made it too costly to continue." "So you believe her actions were justified?" the Corellian judge asked. "I believe her actions were necessary. There is a difference. Justified implies the situation was handled perfectly. Necessary means it was handled in the only way that worked." I surprised myself with my conviction. The Union regulations are designed for ideal situations. Lieutenant Vance was dealing with reality. Sometimes, reality does not care about our protocols. Judge Webb was writing extensive notes. "You are aware that your testimony essentially argues for ignoring established law?" "No, sir. I am arguing that the law needs to account for situations where following it would cause more harm than breaking it. We have exceptions built into almost every Union regulation." "Why not this one?" The tribunal conferred again, this time for much longer. I returned to my seat next to Kira, who leaned over and whispered, "Thanks for that. Even if it does not help. It should help. You saved lives." "Yeah, but I also broke about 30 regulations doing it. Good intentions do not override law. That is kind of the point of having laws." Finally, the judges returned their attention to the room. Judge Webb spoke, his voice carrying weight. "This tribunal has reached a decision. Lieutenant Kira Vance did indeed violate Union regulations regarding weapons limitations, use of force protocols, and de-escalation requirements. These violations are serious and cannot be ignored." The Kresh lawyers looked pleased. "However," Webb continued, "we also find that the circumstances were extreme and that following standard protocol would have resulted in significant harm to civilians under Union protection. We cannot punish someone for making the best decision available in an impossible situation. Therefore, Lieutenant Vance will be issued a formal reprimand for weapons violations. She will also be required to undergo additional training on Union combat protocols." He paused, and I could swear I saw the ghost of a smile. "However, she will not face discharge, criminal charges, or fines. Her actions, while technically illegal, were necessary and effective." The lead Kresh lawyer surged to his feet. "This is outrageous! The law clearly states, the law also clearly states that piracy is illegal," the Varoth judge interrupted. "Your clients have no standing to complain about regulations being violated when they were in the process of committing multiple felonies. This complaint is dismissed. Your clients are fortunate we are not filing countercharges." The tribunal adjourned, and chaos erupted in the hearing room. The Kresh lawyers were arguing loudly. Captain Morkstal looked relieved, and Kira was sitting very still, like she could not quite believe what had just happened. "I won," she said quietly. "You won," I confirmed. "They are making me take more training. Small price to pay." She laughed, a sound of pure relief. I thought for sure I was going to end up dishonorably discharged and owing more credits than I could earn in 3 lifetimes. "You underestimated the tribunal's ability to see reason." "No, I underestimated Judge Webb's willingness to basically rewrite union policy on the fly." She stood, wincing at her still healing injuries. "Come on, I owe you a drink, or whatever your species considers celebratory." We ended up at one of the station's multi-species bars, a place designed to serve everything from liquid nitrogen cocktails to compressed methane snacks. I ordered something that would not kill me. Kira ordered something that probably should have killed her, but humans have ridiculous tolerances. "So," she said, after her first sip, "your report on human integration is going to be interesting." That is an understatement. What are you going to say? That we are all insane and carry too many weapons? I considered this. I am going to say that humans approach problems from a fundamentally different perspective than most species. You assume things will go wrong. You prepare for worst-case scenarios, and you adapt quickly when situations change. That is a diplomatic way of saying we are paranoid and stubborn. Perhaps, but it is effective paranoia. The pirates will think twice before attacking another Union vessel, at least for a while. Word spreads. She grinned. "Yeah, I heard they are calling me the Knife Witch in some circles, which is both insulting and kind of awesome. You earned it. 47 blades. 47 blades and counting. I am redesigning my uniform to hold 60. She saw my expression and laughed. I am joking. Mostly. 55 is probably the practical limit. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the various species move through the bar. So much diversity. So many different ways of seeing the universe. "Threlkos," Kira said eventually. "Thanks for speaking up at the tribunal. You did not have to do that." I told the truth. "Yeah, but you told the truth in a way that helped. That is different. You could have stuck to just the facts and let the judges interpret them however they wanted." She raised her glass. "To honest observers and flexible interpretations of the law." I raised my own drink. "To humans who make life interesting." We clinked glasses, an odd gesture that humans seem to enjoy. 3 weeks later, I was back on the Meridian's Hope, filing my progress report on human integration. It was significantly longer than I had anticipated, and covered topics I had not expected to research. Captain Morkstal stopped by my quarters as I was finishing. "How is the report?" he asked. "Complicated. I am recommending several policy changes based on what I observed." "Should I be worried?" "Only if you are concerned about the Union's ability to adapt to new member species who do not fit our existing frameworks." I gestured at my screen. "Humans are different, Captain. Not better, not worse, just fundamentally different in how they perceive risk and respond to threats. The Knife Witch incident? Among other things. Lieutenant Vance is an extreme example, but she represents a larger pattern. Humans prepare for disaster. They assume the worst. And they do not give up, even when they probably should. That sounds exhausting. For them? Probably. For the rest of us? Useful. As long as we can channel it properly. I saved my report. I am recommending that security protocols be revised to allow for more flexibility in extreme situations. Not eliminate the rules, but acknowledge that sometimes breaking them is the right choice. The tribunal decision should help with that. It should. Judge Webb essentially created legal precedent for necessary violations. Now we just have to figure out how to implement it without causing chaos. Captain Morkstal's scales flickered with amusement. "You know what I think, Threlkos? I think humans are going to change the Union more than the Union changes humans." He was probably right. I saw Kira later that day in the corridor. She was walking without a limp now, her injuries finally healed. She still had that expression, though, the one that suggested she was perpetually 1 second away from doing something memorable. "Report finished?" she asked. "Submitted this morning." "Did you mention the 47 knives?" "Extensively. It is now part of the official Union record. Your children will read about it in history texts." "Bold of you to assume I am going to have children. I can barely keep myself alive." "A fair point." She started to walk away, then paused and turned back. "Hey, Threlkos, if something happens again, which it probably will because this ship apparently attracts trouble, I am going to break more rules. You know that, right? I suspected as much. And you are going to have to report it. That is my job. Will you tell the truth again, even if it gets complicated?" I thought about that. About rules and reality, about protocols and necessity, about doing what was right versus what was easy. "Yes," I said, "I will tell the truth, even if it is complicated." She smiled, that bright human expression that seemed to come so easily to them, despite everything they faced. "Good. Then I think I'm going to get along just fine." She walked away, and I realized something. My assignment to observe human integration was not going to be a simple documentation task. It was going to be a process of understanding, adapting, and probably having my assumptions challenged on a regular basis. The humans were here. They were part of the Union now, and like it or not, they were going to change things. Starting with making us rethink how many weapons one person should reasonably carry. Spoiler alert. The answer was, apparently, not 47. But it was not 3 either. Somewhere in between, the universe was adjusting to accommodate a species that refused to follow the script, prepared for disasters that might never happen, and kept fighting even when every logical analysis said they should surrender. I sent my final report to Union headquarters with a single recommendation. Pay attention to the humans. They are going to surprise us. And then I started preparing my next observation log. Because if there was one thing I had learned, it was that around humans, there was always going to be a next incident. I just hoped I would be ready for it. Though knowing humans, probably not.